Today, there's about 2,000 cryptocurrencies, but you can't build a building with a cryptocurrency, but you sure can with zinc, iron ore, copper, and those type of commodities that we use and rely on in our everyday lives.
Hey friends, Sean from SGT Report here with a very important update about all things metals, not the least of which is zinc. Say, I got this email from SGT Report reader DR just the other day on the 19th of January, and he wrote this. He says, Sean, I know we talked about zinc before, but check out the London Metals Exchange LME levels. Guys, look at this chart of the warehouse stocks level of zinc at the LME. And DR says, I've been watching the spot price of zinc every day for the last 2 weeks. The LME has sold or delivered none. Zinc is the fourth largest used metal now, and demand is even growing more. And meanwhile, now on the 10th, we saw the Chinese say they no longer want to buy any U.S. treasuries. The world is getting crazier by the day, guys. So I wanted to get Max Porterfield, the CEO of Callinex Mines, on the line. He just happens to mine zinc for a living, so I want to talk about what we're seeing here. Max, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for coming back. I don't think we've spoken in about a year. What do you make of that news that the Chinese are thinking about halting purchases of U.S. treasuries?
I think it's going to be very beneficial for the precious metal space moving forward. I think you're obviously going to have to be a buyer of something, but not buyer of treasuries. They're obviously buyers of other currencies out there, and I definitely think precious metals is going to be one of those kind of moving forward in the future, which will be, I think, poised to move precious metals prices much higher.
What do you see as having held back silver and gold, silver specifically, over the past years? What's holding silver and gold back from climbing much higher? Because we see the cryptos reaching for the moon. Why is that? Why we're not seeing silver and gold climb?
I would absolutely agree with you on that. I think that where you traditionally see a move into the precious metal space, you've seen that those money flows go to this crypto space, and cryptocurrencies are becoming very mainstream. Just like you kind of saw gold go very mainstream just about 8-9 years ago, where you had advertisements for "We'll buy your gold." Everyone was talking about gold prices. And I'm sitting in the elevator bank of my condo where I live in Vancouver. And I've got people, in the elevator bank talking about all these different cryptocurrencies that are buying. But again, I think everything's going to revert back to its long-term mean, and money's going to start flowing back to the precious metal space. This place is going to be positioned in. While the cryptos have had a great run, I'm not saying they're not going to continue to do well. I think that's what's been kind of attracting a lot of investors' attention that would traditionally be precious metals buyers.
I don't disagree with you, and in fact, I would have to believe for the person who bought Bitcoin early, it becomes very tempting to sell a Bitcoin or two and turn that into gold or silver. I mean, it's unbelievable how much silver you can buy with one Bitcoin right now, and even one Ethereum.
Well, yeah, not only that, but I tell you one thing: no one can hack your gold because I think there's just recently news out that North Korea is hacking to try to steal some of these cryptocurrencies. I know this has been prevalent in the space. Some of these exchanges have been shut down. Whereas if you hold that physical bullion, obviously you don't have that risk. I mean, you obviously know where it's located, whether it be in a safe deposit box, in a safe at your home, wherever it might be. You've got some security as to the fact that it just won't disappear overnight.
Yeah, that's a good point. They can't hack your gold in physical form when you take physical delivery of it and you hold it. As we've said for a long time, if you don't hold it, you don't own it. One thing that is marking a sea change in this whole crypto precious metals story is we're seeing dealers now, some of these precious metals dealers, say, we're happy to take your Bitcoin for gold. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I have seen that, and it's going to become more and more mainstream, I think. I think really what's going to have its place moving forward in the future, obviously there'll be cryptos out there, but the whole blockchain technology is something that can have huge impacts on global businesses and really streamlining things moving forward and moving a lot of the back office so that humans can focus on more intelligent, more difficult tasks to solve and problems to solve, whereas this blockchain can solve and streamline a lot of the back office movement that occurs between financial institutions and different businesses as they try to track things in the future.
Let's just circle back to zinc. This LME situation is very, very interesting. We know that the stockpiles of zinc are plummeting. Meanwhile, demand is rising. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the geopolitical situation. Geopolitically, Max, we see all of this conflict happening in and around North Korea. And what a lot of people don't realize is that part of the world is central to zinc mining. What happens if we continue to see this type of conflict? How does that affect the global zinc mining situation?
Yeah, I think there's been a growing conflict that continues to get stronger, or worse off between North Korea and the United States. You've seen the U.S. conduct numerous military drills with personnel in the region. You've had politicians like Lindsey Graham recently signal a warning sign to remove the U.S. dependence based on a growing threat of war in the region. It's been widely assumed that North Korea's Hwasong-15 rocket could carry a nuclear warhead, and it is widely believed that it could reach cities in the United States. And it seems like despite UN sanctions, China has continued to deliver oil to North Korea against those sanctions. And North Korea doesn't seem to be backing down from this at all. This is going to could potentially have a dramatic impact on the zinc market, because really at the end of the day, people don't realize that 55% of refined zinc production on a global basis comes from three countries. It's China, Japan, and South Korea, which is actually why I've traveled here to Japan. For one of the reasons is to kind of understand what the sentiment is over this concern of tension between North Korea and the rest of the Eastern Asian population or countries. If you look at just one facility in South Korea, it's the equivalent of approximately produces about 10% of global zinc production, which is the equivalent if you look on kind of the oil production basis, and everyone looks at OPEC as a big cartel in the oil space, but that's basically the equivalent of Saudi Arabia's contribution to global oil supply, because they basically supply roughly 10% of the world's oil. So again, this could change very quickly and have bigger impacts on the zinc market. As you noted, this is a zinc market that's already been very, very tight. We're in a supply deficit that we discussed before. I know when we had our last interview, I was also traveling at the time then, and zinc prices were below 80 cents. And now they've rallied to $1.54 a pound, which is a decade high. And you look at zinc inventories, there's less than 10 days of zinc inventory out there in the LME and Shanghai exchanges. And it's been continuing to declining. Inventories have declined over 85% since 2012. And they're nearing critically low levels that are very dependent on the countries around, obviously North Korea there.
Well, we also see that China has been closing mines, and what's the significance of that? And I guess if we just go big picture too, what's the significance of zinc in general? For our audience, help people understand how important zinc is. For instance, I know that they make all our pennies in this country out of zinc. Why is zinc so important? Help us understand the significance and importance of zinc in general.
Yeah, well, first off, China is obviously one of the largest producer of zinc on a global basis. They have been shutting down a lot of their mines due to pollution because the way those mines operate aren't the most environmentally friendly ways. And I think China's, as they've grown and are growing into a more developed economy, they're going to be tightening that because population is not going to put up with it, just like population wouldn't put up with it in the U.S. or in Canada here where I reside. With that being said, on a kind of a global basis, zinc is the fourth most consumed metal in the world. It's used in pretty much everyday life, that anything that everyone uses it takes for granted. They don't realize that zinc's in it. For example, your automobile, it's the biggest consumption for zinc is in the galvanization process. So when you galvanize a steel for using a bridge or building, zinc is what's used to coat it, coats the steel so that it, is anti-corrosion, so it won't rust.
Got it.
And extends the life of the infrastructure out there. And I think as you continue to have global growth, the emerging middle class comes and wants to consume more of these everyday necessities that we take for granted in North America. There's going to be more and more demand on zinc. Meanwhile, you've really got a big supply constraint that I think is only going to tighten in the future if we don't see continued higher prices, which you've already seen over the past 12 months. But again, I think, if you look at the long-term prices for zinc, going back to the last, big bull market you had for zinc in 2006, where it had a very large move, it's really been around $1 to $1.10 a pound. So that short-term blip down to below 70 cents that occurred in late 2015 was very short-term, and obviously it's rallied off of that. But we're not much higher than $10 price, where it's been kind of the long term since '06. At $1.50, I think we could rally much higher from here in the future before it reverts and stabilizes at a higher base price than where we started the whole this current bull market.
All right, and let's talk about 2018 and your company and how Callinex is positioned. I know you've had big supporters like Rick Rule come out from Sprott Group and RCF Capital, who made you, Callinex, their only junior exploration play out of some 300 companies they own. Tell us a little bit about Callinex and how you guys are positioned and why folks might want to consider taking a position.
Yeah, absolutely. So at Callinex, we saw this opportunity in the zinc space in early 2015. We were looking for different opportunities, and actually at sub 80 cent zinc in early 2016, before you had this big move, we went out and acquired 3 zinc-rich deposits in Eastern Canada. Since then, we've had some very aggressive exploration campaigns. The news that we put out is showing that we're growing our zinc-rich resources in the Bathurst camp of New Brunswick, which is in Eastern Canada, as I mentioned. And we're going to have continued news flow and continued exploration work and development work on those deposits in the Bathurst camp, most notably our Nash Creek deposit. So what we really benefit from, aside from having zinc deposits, is having zinc deposits in a Tier 1 jurisdiction that we're actively growing through our technical team's exploration efforts on the properties that we own, that is located right along a highway with high voltage power, 25 kilometers from a smelting operation, as well as other processing facilities in the area, which reduces all your upfront capital costs significantly to take a deposit into production, as well as lets you streamline things much more quickly because you don't have to build out, all this infrastructure to a deposit that might be very, very remote. Mining is a big part of Canada's GDP, and there's a lot of mines in the Bathurst camp, which is one of the top 10 camps on a global basis for these VMS deposits that are rich in zinc, copper, gold, and silver, as well as lead.
All right, and you guys are also positioned up there next to some pretty major players. And as we talk about the future of the company, do you think 2018 is the year of further acquisitions or development? Or do you think it's possible that it could even be the year that you get a big offer from a major player like Hudbay Minerals or one of the other big players?
Yeah, I definitely think that right now is the year to really focus on the assets that we have within the company. Last year we did 20,000 meters of drilling. That's a very aggressive drilling campaign. And that's really how you add value to companies like Callinex, is growing deposits, making discoveries, and moving these along. I think for us, we're looking to put out a preliminary economic assessment, which will show the potential for our Nash Creek and Superjack projects in Bathurst to be economic. And as we move these forward and de-risk these assets and increase their value through growing the resource space, I think that we would potentially be a natural takeover target for larger companies that are looking to grow their pipeline of future production. So I definitely think that there's a lot of opportunity in 2018. Excited to get to work and think we've got a lot ahead for us.
Yeah, I think so too. And, as we round out this conversation, let's just talk about the bitter pill, which is, did you ever think you'd live in a universe where people were mining digital gold, digital assets, and the market and some of the deep-pocketed investors out there just don't seem to be interested in mining stocks? Meanwhile, everybody's super interested in mining digital assets like Ethereum and Bitcoin and Litecoin. It's a strange, brave new world, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a bit odd. I mean, there's the same concepts behind both mining, Bitcoin or any other, cryptocurrency as you would have in terms of mining a zinc deposit. Obviously, there's, capital costs that go into producing, and these miners want to make obviously a profit on the cryptos. And, it's about energy consumption at the end of the day for those, the cryptocurrencies and mining those. It's just a different concept, whether it stays or which cryptocurrency ultimately becomes the kind of the reserve cryptocurrency out there is really yet to be seen yet. Because I think today there's about 2,000 cryptocurrencies, but you can't build a building with a cryptocurrency, but you sure can with zinc, iron ore, copper, and those type of commodities that we use and rely on in our everyday lives.
Yeah. Well, and that's the funny part. That's sort of what I'm driving at, is that in the real world, the world in which we live day to day, we need zinc, we need silver, we need copper, we don't necessarily need that much gold, although people definitely like it as a monetary asset, but we need these physical precious metals. But as we're talking, we see Ethereum above 1,000, and most of our friends, neighbors, and colleagues don't even know what Ethereum is. And it's just...
I don't think that most people that are buying cryptocurrencies know what they're buying either, and I think that's a very real concern. To where you get, asset classes that become extremely overvalued, which is what I was trying to allude to when I was, discussing when I'm sitting in my elevator bank at the condo where I live, because these guys are talking about wanting to buy something for a penny, and the thing is, if it just goes to $1, it'd be a good investment. Now, I mean, it'd be nice if you buy something at a penny, make 100 times your money, but I think you and I are both kind of more astute investors to know that that's just not how investing works. But when you've got that kind of emotion coming in from people that don't know any better, I think that's where it can get really nasty. It's very dangerous for the average person that's kind of starting to invest in something they have no concept of even what they're buying.
Well, it definitely is an interesting story, this whole crypto space story. We continue to follow it because I think some of these crypto companies are going to be around for the long haul. And, as you just alluded to, with 2,000 plus out there, many of them will be going away. They're going to be going the way of the dinosaur. But it's an interesting story. But standing in opposition to that are the precious metals. They're not going anywhere. And if we want to live in a first world nation, if we want to green the world, if we want to go solar, if we want to get off oil, we need these metals, right, to better the world. So that's why I like talking with guys like you, because what you do for a living is important. You're living in the real world and you're producing real assets that the world needs. So I guess final word from you, Max Porterfield, about Callinex Mines. And guys, the ticker, by the way, is CLLXF on the over-the-counter and CNX on the TSX. But final word for you on Callinex.
Yeah, no, I mean, in terms of Callinex, we're very excited with the exploration programs we have ongoing. We've got a lot of news flow here in the very near future over the coming weeks and months, as well as other exploration and campaigns, predominantly focused on growing our zinc-rich assets within proximity infrastructure in eastern Canada. And we'd obviously have high sensitivity to rising zinc prices moving forward because, as zinc prices move higher, it just makes our zinc deposits that we're expanding that much more valuable. And it's a very exciting year for us. Visit our website at callinex.ca, which is CALLINEX.ca.
All right, very good. Well, Max, thanks so much for your time. You know how much we appreciate it. We should probably try to talk more than once a year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's a lot that's gone on.
All right, guys, our guest has been Max Porterfield, the CEO and president of Callinex Mines. And guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Do check us out at sgtreport.com, thephaser.com, and thelibertymill.com for real news 24/7. God bless.
I want people to understand, if the CME is doing this to Bitcoin, if the banks are doing this to Bitcoin, that hopefully trickles down to everybody that follows me on Twitter going, wait a second, you mean the banks aren't my friend? Seriously? The banks are out to screw me? Yeah, the banks and the central bankers are trying to control everything.